Welcome to the Intake Podcast. We are your hosts, Carson Miller and Travelle McManus, and this is the podcast where we dive into the media shaping our world today.
On today's episode, we have a review of Severance Season 2 so far. We are going to talk about the Oscars briefly. We are going to introduce a new segment called Daily Drivers and then set this week's outtake. Many of you engage with us on social media in the comment section, just talking about some of the things that have impacted you so far. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Travelle to kind of review some of those comments.
Yeah, so we got some few good suggestions here, and so one that Brooke and Kirk sent us was Sinners, and I am not. So just for those who don't know, Sinner is an upcoming horror movie directed by Ryan Kohler. I keep wanting to say Gosling. Ryan Kohler, who did Black Panther and Creed, and so it's a really nice cast. You got Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld, Jack O'Connell, and so I'm not a horror. We both have said this on the podcast that we're not horror movie people,
No.
but this is probably the closest movie that has really intrigued me because it has all the things that I would want. I mean, the concept is very interesting. It takes place during Jim Crow era in the 1930s. And it has this, just like this really nice, mysterious feel to it. I saw half of it. I saw half of the track. I'm like turned away. I was like, ah. But it seems like one that I would be worth entertaining based on what the conversation at the box office is. Because I mean, I love Ryan Coogler. I love Michael B. Jordan. So when they team up together, like in Black Panther, like in Creed, you get amazing things happening. So
if there's a horror movie that we will go see this year, it's probably this one, but don't hold your breath.
yes, exactly. Yes, that's well put.
Which also sounds like a horror movie that I don't want to see.
Yeah. And so, but then on a more a lighthearted note, so Jackson gave us The Pit. I've seen commercials for this.
I don't know if it's lighthearted.
And is it okay? I see. Never mind. I feel like I've seen like a really good like lighthearted interaction throughout the show.
Okay, maybe.
But I don't know. I mean, it reminds me of Grey's Anatomy, which I don't know anything about that. So I'm the worst person to be talking about this right now. But I did watch a trailer of it today, and then just like the information on it, talks about a healthcare professional that lives in Pittsburgh. Yeah. He's just kind of juggling all the battles that come with being a healthcare professional with work politics, the emotional toll of dealing with ill patients, and just the resilience to like answer that call because like someone has to be there to save these lives. And so seems like a really interesting show. I mean, I know these type of shows have run their course, Grey's Anatomy, but there's always seemed to be an audience there to hear the story of people in the healthcare profession.
Yeah, that is not a genre that I typically dive into. The one that I was curious about was St. Denis Medical, which is like if The Office was set in a hospital, and that is more my speed. So if this is any sort of serious medical drama, it's not for me. But excited that people are enjoying it. I have seen the commercials, and it did look well produced, and it seems to be getting good ratings, along with a show called Paradise, which seems to be a confusing title to me for a show that is a mystery surrounding the murder of a former president and some Secret Service agents, and it just seems very intriguing, and Paradise is not a title that I would have associated with that subject matter. But it was recommended to us by Amy, and so was Snow White, the new live-action Snow White, which the live-action Disney movies seem to be hit or miss.
Yes.
They're either like absolutely incredible or not so great. And just being able to see another one of those come out. I know we're both excited for Lilo and Stitch, which we talked about last week as a live action Disney remake. This is the other one that's coming out this year. It didn't make our top 10s, but it has Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot in the movie, and Amy enjoys Disney princess romance movies, so we'll see how this goes for Snow White. And then an A24 movie, shout out to A24, Death of a Unicorn, which was an absolutely bonkers trailer. It had Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega in it, and they hit a unicorn with their car. This is all in the trailer, so no spoilers. Not, I mean, it's not out, so I can't spoil it. But
I mean, it's
um,
Death of the Unicorn. It's in the
it's a
title,
death of a
so.
unicorn, and it just gets crazy from there. And there seems to be like this uber wealthy family. So there's just like that. I think there's going to be that super rich, kind of wackiness that goes on in
Hmm.
some movies recently. Kind of a commentary on the uber wealthy. So that is Death of a Unicorn, which people were excited for. So I think that kind of wraps up most of the things that we saw in the comments. If you have other things
Hmm.
that you want us to talk about, just put them down in the comments. You might even convince us to go see a horror movie. You never know.
Yeah.
So, big question. Did we watch the Oscars last night?
The big
And
question.
a big letdown is coming because I don't think that we did.
No.
I turned it on for probably about 15, 20 minutes, saw a couple of lesser awards being announced. Um, so turned it on, but to be honest, didn't see many of the movies this year
Yeah.
and didn't have the buy-in to be able to watch it. And starting a podcast about movies really took up more of my time than what I would normally have to devote to watching some of those movies and get caught up and be invested in it. So we do
Hmm.
want to say congrats to all the winners. I know that there were some first time winners, a couple repeat winners, and just congrats to them. Hopefully, we'll catch up on some of those great movies as the year progresses and then want to be involved next year. But
Yeah.
Travell, did you turn it on at all last night?
No, a little bit. I was following it. Like I was just
Mm.
getting the notifications for the winners and the different topics, and but same as you, like everyone starts a podcast and now they're the expert of whatever topic they want to be in, and so we didn't want to come and kind of fake that today, and wanted to stay true to the fact that we just, like you said, like starting a podcast, like trying to watch the shows that we already kind of talked about before. It's just it's hard, and I mean, like the movie that won was like almost 4 hours long, and so we just like the time to invest in that just wasn't there this year. But I'm hoping
Yeah.
that that's not the case next year. I'm hoping that with us having this whole year of just really being mindful of what we're watching
Mhm.
and kind of keeping track of the things that are coming out better than I've ever done before,
Right.
that next year we can actually have a legitimate conversation about the Oscars, who won, all the lore around it, and
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
You'll get our hot takes, unsolicited opinions, and let you know who was supposed to win and did win. But you'll have to
Yeah.
wait 365 days for that
Yes.
commentary.
Yes. But what we don't have to wait 365 days to talk about is the little bit past halfway point
Mm,
of Severance, which has just been the show that has just been taken over.
mm,
It feels like it's like I cannot blink without seeing Severance videos and just
mm.
people talking about it. And it's just been a really exciting time for television. I
Yeah.
feel like with this, White Lotus, and other TV shows coming out. But yeah, today we're going to really dive into Severance and just pick up where we're at currently, so that way we can have more wiggle room to talk about the last 3 episodes, but have a conversation about the first 7 of season 2.
Yeah.
But first, going back to season 1.
Season one, man, that was a long time ago. And I think that's part of
Yes.
what hurt the show a little bit is that there was a big
Hmm.
gap between season one and season two. But it is
Yes.
still, I think it's a part of the cultural zeitgeist right now. There is I mean, most of the people that I see online or even talk to in person, they're talking about Severance on a weekly basis. It is the water cooler show right now where
Hmm.
people are just talking about it at work, at church, wherever you gather with people, somebody is going to say, "Hey, have you watched Severance?" And I think that's a
Yep.
testament to the first season where it was very, I don't know, had a very independent feel to it. It didn't feel like a big budget TV show. It was very well produced, and I'm sure it has a
Hmm.
huge budget, but it just felt really small and focused on the story of Mark S. And
Yes.
being a severed worker, and really what that means for those who may or may not keep up with the show is that they have a little chip in their head that when they get to work, they go down a special elevator and they have a totally separate persona at work. Separate memories, separate thought processes, separate relationships from their personal life at home. And they make that switch every day. And when they switch back, they have no recollection of either their personal life or their work life, depending on which way the switch is being flicked. And so we really zoom in on the story, and it's full of mystery. There's like indication that there's some nefarious things at the company going on. There's this weird religious cult
Yes.
at the company as well. And so it just slowly drops clues over time until a really big cliffhanger of an ending to season one, where
Yes.
what's called the innies, the work personas, take over in the outside world. Something called the overtime contingency, and they take over in the outside world and announce to the world that they are not happy individuals as innies, as the work people, that they also have rights and feelings and a whole bunch of different things that they want to express to the world. So it just drops you dead in the middle of that happening, and the season's over. And then we had to
Yeah.
wait, I think it was 3 years
3 years. Yeah. And
for
it
season
suffered
two.
from, yeah, and it suffered from like the writer's strike and things like that. So
Yeah.
that kind of played a role into it. But it's just such an interesting show, and it has so many, it's telling the story while also making a lot of different statements, whether that's, work culture, mental health, so many different tidbits to where it is such a across the board experience for everyone that's watching, because everyone can take something different. Every person
Right.
that I have a conversation with about Severance, the conversation is different based on how they're perceiving it, where they're at in life. People that are more work focused, we're having a conversation about the corporate side of it. People that are more mentally aware, we're talking about, this idea of being able to separate
Right.
the anxieties of life, of work, of all these different hard things,
Yep.
being able to kind of have someone else pretty much handle that and then go back to living your normal life. And so there's just so many different, like, that's, I think, what makes this like such a special television show, is that it's
Yeah.
just there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to just take it in and get lost in this world that they've created.
Right. So we actually haven't talked that much about Severance. We know
No.
that we are watching it, and you're keeping up with it a little bit better than I am. I'm pretty much catching up on 2 or 3 episodes at a time, but I am fully caught up all the way through episode 7. So why don't we just kind of talk about how we felt about season 2 so far?
Yeah,
What
that
have
was
been your
good.
thoughts? You like it better, like it worse than season 1 so far? Just kind of tell me where you're at with it.
So there are definitely some things that they've done differently this season that I've noticed in season one. Where season one, it felt like there was a lot of back and forth between the innies and outies.
Mm-hmm.
You were getting the same story told just consistently.
Right.
Where this one, there seems to be a theme each episode. Where, like,
Right.
for this episode, we're going to focus only on the innies, and then we focus on the outies and get more context of what's actually happening to the innies. And there's this back and forth that we kind of see. But something that season 2 has done an amazing job is kind of breaking out of that cadence in the most unexpected ways with,
Right.
my two favorite episodes. I mean, this most recent episode, but also episode 4, the Will Hollows episode.
Yeah.
So they're still keeping the concept fresh. Like, there is a cadence there, and it works. Everyone loves it. Everyone loves being in the office and just all the different little humorous moments, but then also the serious, mysterious moments and all the conspiracy theories that come from that. And then,
Right.
how relatable the outside world is with, navigating work-life balance and things like that. But then you have these moments of just like high stakes, high tension. And I think season 2 has done really well on that, where season 1 was doing a lot of the, like, we didn't really get that until like the final episode of season 1, where we've already had 2 or 3 really big, like, oh man, like moments. And we're not even, we're like pretty much in like the third act of the season. So, and it seems like it's only going to get bigger from here. So.
Right. Yeah. Are we doing spoilers? Are we talking spoilers?
I mean, I think, I mean, almost kind of have to.
Kinda
I
have
think
to.
we can, bookmark this, come back to it later if you're not caught
Right.
up. But
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably not going to spoil anything that you probably already haven't heard, but I have felt okay about season 2. There's been moments
okay,
that I've loved it. There's been moments that I don't know. It just feels okay. I think some of my favorite parts about season 1 were the quirky, humorous moments that came within the workplace when they just randomly had a waffle party and were super excited about it. or got a little stapler, or, you know, as a reward in those workplace environment, a reward was a stapler. And
Yeah.
those type of things that had comedic value, I really kind of miss those in season two because we are focused on the mystery and the drama and kind of the build up to some of these bigger events that happen. I feel like we're missing some of the quirkiness of the show that brought some
Hmm.
levity. And I also have really missed, and I'm blanking on his name, Mark S's brother-in-law who writes the self-help book.
Oh, I'm blanking
The
on his name too.
the
The
you
you are.
Yeah, I have missed him in season two.
Okay.
He really he brought in just some comedy. He brought in a different perspective. You had, instead of just the only having the dueling perspectives of work and life, you also had this other person that was bringing in this mental health um, outlook with his book and how that affected the rest of the story. And so I feel like I'm missing that part of it this season. But the
Hmm.
actual drama, learning about the mystery a little bit more, getting some of those overtones of this really is a cult type workplace, and there is some weird things going on there that I've enjoyed that part of it. But I have missed,
Hmm.
it's definitely been a darker season,
Hmm.
I would say.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I miss some of the levity that came along with it.
Hmm.
But overall, still
Yeah.
like it. I think that, like you said, see episode 4, where it's revealed that Heliar is not Heliar and it was Helena Egan who was posing as her, was a really good episode because you're outside of the workplace, but you were with the Ennies and they were on a retreat. And that whole dynamic was very interesting, and some drama introduced there
Hmm.
on the retreat.
That's one
So
way. Yes.
I think that was really good. Although I will say I saw that coming. Like I didn't believe that Heliar was there. I thought it was
Oh.
Helena the whole time. So like there wasn't a big
Mm,
surprise for me at least. Joanna,
yeah.
and if you did believe it was Heliar, that's awesome. It's probably a better
Ba-
experience actually
yeah.
than having
You. I
predicted
mean,
it.
I think. So. So did you? So you did you know going into episode 4, or did you know at like episode
Uh,
like
when they
when did you know?
first when they first got back to, when Mark said that he wouldn't work without his friends, and they
Hmm.
brought them all back. Pretty much from the second she got off the elevator, I was like,
Okay.
"That's not her." Like,
That's
it's
impressive.
just
I did
not.
not pick up on that.
And well, maybe not right then. I mean, when she lied about the night gardener or
Mm,
whatever, when she
yeah.
lied, I said, "No, that's not consistent with who the character was in the first season," and
Yeah.
just didn't believe it from then. I mean, it still could have been. I
Hmm.
wasn't like 100%, but I was in the 80%. Like, this is not her.
Yeah.
Somebody. It's her outie posing as the Annie.
And I that threw me off too because I would have thought that if it was Helena and she was spy, she would have came up with a better lie.
Right.
Because I mean, that really was what gave it away
Mm,
when Irvin confronted her, was just how
right.
poor that lie was. So I just
Yeah.
didn't think. I thought it was and this I guess was maybe the writing of it. Like I
Yeah.
thought it was a lie that seems fitting for any
Mm,
that doesn't have a lot of experience in the outside world,
right.
not someone like a Helena
Hmm.
who is out there and knows what's going on. And so that's why I was dismissive of it.
Mm,
Um, but episode 4, it very much. I mean, very quickly you could see it in her face and just
right.
like how she carried herself.
Yeah.
Like this was not Helly,
Yeah.
and so but yeah, it was, yeah. And I think I really liked that episode because it broke us out, because it, and this last episode also had that same effect of you do get used to the consistency
Mm,
of the story, the beat of the story, and then next thing you know, the episode starts and you're in the middle of a winter forest,
right.
and and we went into that episode thinking, we're not going to be in the office. Like, we love
Mm,
being. I love The Office. I
yeah.
love I love how they shoot.
Right.
Like, they use different lenses for when they're in the office, for when they're out of the office, and all the cinematography stuff that they do is like some of my best,
Right.
my favorite stuff. The way they
Yeah.
use composition, the way they use lines, the way that they frame.
Mm.
They use simple mirrors to reflect the conflict of being innies versus outies.
Right.
Is amazing.
Yeah.
But then you have these like, yeah, this episode where it takes you into a whole nother story
Yeah.
or a whole nother something that's just different, and they execute on it well.
Mm.
Where I don't feel like that's something that's very common with these TV. What works, they stick to. They
Right.
punch it to the ground, and then they go 2 seasons extra too long, and now we're all exhausted.
Right.
And we're just not getting that here.
Yeah.
And even this last episode, like going back and having this really heartfelt story about Mark, Mark and Gemma and what that looked like, how they got to where they're at currently. That's something that we're just not, we're not used to. We're not used to seeing Mark happy,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and that was really our introduction to Gemma, because we knew Miss Casey, but we didn't know
Right.
who Gemma was. And so
Right.
I think they did it, when it comes to introducing a character like that, a very important key character. I think they executed in one episode.
Yeah.
They created emotional connection. They created stakes for why it's important for us to know that she's okay, and
Right.
to question if she will remain
Okay.
okay. Yes, okay, yes, okay. Swinging a chair at
Right.
people in
Yeah.
anger. That's and so,
Right.
but the stakes are there. That emotion, and it is a darker tone. Like this season definitely is a darker tone.
Right.
And I don't know. I've embraced it. I overall like it. I mean, season one definitely has a hold on me on just how charming it was. But I don't think that this is I think this is just as good of a product because of just
Right.
the bigger is the way that is expanding while still staying true to what it is.
Yeah. I think my biggest fear with this season is that it's a bridge season where there's part of me that feels like episode 1 or season 1 was we have this one story we're going to tell and we're going to cut it
Yeah.
here, and then I don't know if they knew what came next. That's my fear about the show and other shows, where part of the production of getting a TV show produced is that you need to be able to tell a story in that one season, whether you're going to continue or not. And sometimes that leads to they have one season worth of story that they have planned out and are ready to tell, and then it does fantastic, and they have to come up with a season 2 to bridge to whatever their bigger idea is in like a season 3 or season 4. I think Stranger Things is a great example of this, where season 1 was intended to be season like a standalone season, and then if there was a season 2 of Stranger Things, it was going to be a completely different story, completely different characters. But season 1 was so well received and people loved it so much that they had to continue the story, and season 2 of Stranger Things is a bridge story. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It was still a fine season, but that's how I'm kind of feeling about this season, is that they're telling us, like you said, the cadence is different. Instead of each episode getting back and forth between Innie and Outie, we're getting an episode with the Innies and kind of an episode with the Outies, and it's a different cadence and rhythm throughout the season to get us to whatever big story points at the end, to then launch us into multiple seasons where maybe I think they have a better plan of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I think that season 1, some of the themes that they touched on was like, what if your work life had no outside context? And I think that's what I found charming about the show, was that you were watching a group of people that had no idea about the outside world almost at all. They had the basics, but they were thrilled about a waffle party, or thrilled that they got to use the copier, like where they don't have context, and that led to some humorous moments like I was talking about earlier. This season is definitely touching more on what are the individual rights of an Innie versus an Outie. And I think the last 2 episodes have really hit on that, of
Yes.
who has the right to relationships, who has the right to this one body that two people or 2 personas are sharing. You just have some of those themes coming in, which I think are very interesting questions. They're just not quite as funny. That's
Yeah.
not it. Those are not funny
Yeah.
questions. Those are serious questions, and something that I think is interesting to consider. And how does
Mm-hmm.
religion play into that? We had that
Yeah.
in the second to last episode 6, I believe. And how does religion play into that? And what
Yeah.
is this weird religious cult? I'd be interested to know more about that and just to understand what's going on there, which we haven't gotten a lot of, which is
Yeah.
another thing
No.
that leads me to think it's a bridge season. I
Yes.
think they're gonna get us to a point that then season 3 we're gonna learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
I have stopped anticipating learning more about Kier and the Egan family. I think that's being
Mm-hmm.
saved for season 3. I don't think we're gonna get
Yes.
any of that.
Yes, because I think whatever we discover in Lumen, whatever's happening behind the scenes, is going
Mm.
to put us back to where their religion aligns, whether
Right,
that's immortality, which has been a
right,
theory that's been thrown out there,
mm.
or creating this ultimate religion that sells you on heaven on earth where
Mm.
there's no pain. I mean,
Right,
kind of the same lines of immortality, but there's no
right,
pain, there's no struggle, there's
mm.
no challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting, going off what you were saying of, listening to Ben Stiller in some of the post episodes, the
Right,
way that he views the Annies is very much like kids.
mm.
And he talks about season one, them being the kids that
Mm.
just kind of go through life, or no context of the hardships of the world,
Right,
or what it
mm.
means to have responsibilities, meaningful relationships, and
Right,
then this being the episode where it is like a come to life, like a coming of age, like
right,
now you have context, now you have
mm.
relationships, you have
Right,
things that Dylan and being introduced to his wife and his
right,
having context of, and it's been really interesting seeing his character and
yeah,
seeing how he is responding to like getting
mm.
the context of what his world on the outside looks like,
Right,
and how that dictates his decisions
yeah,
inside, even though these two things should be separate,
mm.
but in his eyes they're not. And so it seems like the show, I like it because it seems like the show is growing
Mm-hmm.
in tone with the innies themselves.
Right,
And I do see like the religious cult thing being
yeah,
kind of the golden, the top, the epitome of it all,
right,
because you can't really get bigger than that when you start introducing, you know, religion and
yeah,
spiritual stuff, and just Cobell and her beliefs behind
mm.
this, and the roles that she plays. And so yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
journey. It's definitely.
And I don't even know if they're gonna go in. It's not spiritual at all. Like there's no spiritual. It's
Yeah.
obviously cultish. So when I'm saying
Yes.
religious, I'm saying cultish.
Yes.
There seems to be very little value placed on spirit or supernatural necessarily. It is
Mm-hmm.
very much a this is our leader. We will follow him no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Science Yeah. Rooted
science.
in a science project.
Right. So there is, I think that's a very interesting route for it to go. And I have not been watching the end of episode, like
Oh, they're good.
behind the scenes stuff. I have not been watching that. It's just been like, man, I'm just going to get to the next episode and keep going.
Yeah.
So maybe I should watch some of those on the next couple
They're
episodes.
insightful.
But do you have any
They're really good.
theories about where we're going to end up in the next few episodes? Anything
Yes.
kind of
I
going in
have
that direction?
So I have three theories. Well, and they're not big because
Okay.
I've seen people go crazy. I just
Yeah.
have very like one will be I believe in this season we will get a Gemma and Mark interaction.
Mm,
Whether that's at the end of the season,
right.
episode 9 and then 10 kind of doing the cleanup.
Mm,
But I believe that we are going to see them interact in some way,
right.
whether that's more than likely it will be any Mark because
Mm,
of where she's at. Well, it will be kind of a mix of both.
reintegrated.
So,
Yeah.
yes. And so I do believe that that will be one.
Mm,
I do think that Gemma will be exposed to some degree, the relationship between Mark and Helly slash
right.
Helena,
Mm.
which will make things very interesting for whenever that interaction does come about.
Right.
And then my last theory is I think Helena will eventually turn on Lumen. I
Mm,
think the pieces are there. I don't know if it will be necessarily Mark, but more so just the escape.
yeah.
And I think maybe the impact that Helly will start having on her, whether that's making more crazy decisions like she did in season 1, where she almost,
Right.
she was like causing harm to herself,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just the weight of being able to have access to like seeing the interactions that her innie is having and seeing the ways that that's either hurting her
Right.
or restraining her from having the life that she wants to have, because that's definitely there. She definitely had a moment where she shared that in a vulnerable state, and
Right.
so I think that those are like the three that I am kind of, all the
Mm.
big picture stuff like Cole Harbor, all of that. I'm just gonna. People have gone in 40 different directions,
Right.
and it's starting to give me a headache. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna wait to see what they give
Mm.
us. But those are like three that I feel pretty confident. Helena might be one that takes place later on, but I'm
Right.
confident that we will get a Gemma and Mark interaction with there being a lot of tension
Mm.
around that.
Right. I think I would agree with all of those at some point. I think we'll definitely get Mark and Gemma interaction. I think that Helena will turn, but that may be saved for season 3. Um,
Yeah.
so I have a couple. I think that Irving and Bert are going to revert back to any selves to be together.
Okay.
I think they're going to do that or find a way to do that, to try to do that, which I think would be interesting, that somebody would prefer their any life over their outie life. I think I think that's going
So
to
like
be where the
full, full, like just get rid of their Audis and just
yep.
go full any.
Yep,
Oh,
just go any. Yeah.
interesting.
So, because we've seen that the chip can be triggered in their brains outside, it doesn't require that special elevator, which I think was part of like season one's mystery was, can it only
Yeah.
happen with the elevator? Now it can be triggered anywhere, and I think they're going to try to trigger it in their heads to be their innies full time. I think that somebody is going to die this season. There's part of me
Ooh.
that thinks it might be Mark. I think, like, I don't know, I just have a feeling that
Ooh.
Mark may not make it, or at the very least, we will leave the season thinking he may have died.
Then who would be the focus? Because he is the focus of the show. So who would
He
be
is.
would it be a focus shift? Like a,
It could be. It could be
I mean, it could be
Focus.
Jim. I mean, it could be
Could be
Gemma. I
Gemma.
mean,
It could be Helly. It could be Dylan. I don't know if all of them make it out. I think
yeah.
even Mr. Milchek, he could die, and I would,
Yeah.
you know,
I would bet money on
I
that. Yeah.
yeah, I think that creepy little Asian girl that is there, that is acting like an adult. It creeps me out, and she may kill him or something. That would be one of my predictions. And I think that the religious culty aspect is tied into the being able to sever out all pain and suffering.
Mm.
I think that is, I would be shocked if that wasn't tied together in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
maybe less of a prediction and more of an obvious statement, but I think those are tied together,
Yeah.
especially
I
after
think
the
it's
last
just,
episode. So,
yes, definitely. I'm wondering like what is the overall goal? How how are they marketing this? How
right.
are they packaging this?
Yeah.
Like what is the sales pitch of accomplishing this?
Right.
Because I do think it's a matter of, is it death? Like is
Mm,
it going to be something that overcomes
mm,
the feeling of death or like the
right.
mental toll of death, or
Yeah.
is it something that is just meant to remove, because those are like
Mm,
two completely different things, to
right.
live a life free of negative emotions
Mm,
and to live a life free of negative emotions and free of even death itself.
right.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
so two
Interesting.
different stories. Yeah, so I'm very curious to see what, because I mean, yeah,
Right.
like they're giving us enough to know that that's kind of the 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 goal of the product
Mm-hmm.
of being severed, but
Right.
what is the bigger picture? So
Right. How is that profitable?
yes,
Is it
yes,
or is it
what it
not?
comes down to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, there is our kind of 3/4 season review of Severance. We will bring to you a full review of the season after the final episode airs, and we will come in with all of our thoughts, opinions, and even predictions for season 3. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed this part of the discussion, and we'll tune in for that next part here in a few weeks. I think there's 3 more episodes to come out, and we'll probably be proven wrong on many fronts.
Yep.
So, But we are now going to move into a new segment that we are calling Daily Drivers. So we both have content creators, channels, podcasts, authors that we engage with almost on a weekly basis. And we needed a segment to be able to talk about those without talking about them every single week. And
Yeah.
so we're calling it Daily Drivers. That's a term kind of used in the tech world to talk about tech products that are used on a daily basis that get you through the day. Like my AirPods would be a daily driver if we were talking about tech, or my iPhone, or even this mic if we recorded on a daily basis. So those would be considered daily drivers. So these are our daily drivers of content. What do we listen to on a weekly basis? And mine that I'm going to bring to the table today is kind of a YouTube channel slash podcast. It is predominantly a and slash radio show, really. So it is the Rich Eisen show. It is a
Okay.
sports talk show. It's primarily focused on the NFL. It's produced by NFL Network, and Rich Eisen is an employee of the NFL, but he brings his thoughts and opinions to the sports world along with a cast of not characters. They are characters, but not in like fictional, but they just kind of act goofy. Not as goofy as Pat McAfee, but on the goofy side of things, and bringing sports talk, but not in a way of arguing and yelling and being mean to each other, or, you know, it's not inflammatory content where they're just trying to get clicks and views based
Yes.
on yelling about something that day. They are genuinely talking about sports and things that I enjoy, and again, specifically the NFL. So they have a couple things that they do that are kind of the antithesis of what sports talk has become, where it is inflammatory. So they have a segment called Overreaction Monday, where they purposefully come up with an overreaction to something, such as if Patrick Mahomes only threw for 200 yards and had two interceptions, the overreaction would be Patrick Mahomes is the worst quarterback in the NFL, and that is brought by one of the cast members, Chris Brockman, and then Rich Eisen goes, no, that's an overreaction because we know Patrick Mahomes performs consistently the rest of the season, so stop saying that. Or, no, that's a proper reaction. We should really consider that as a real reaction to what has happened in the sports world. And they do this a little bit with the NBA, a little bit with baseball, a little bit of hockey. Whatever's going on in the sports world, they also have that brought into it. But it is, again, primarily focused on the football side of things. And I really enjoy the NFL product that is put out, and I love watching football. So, uh, the reason it is a radio show slash podcast slash YouTube channel is because it is primarily supposed to be listened to on the radio or watched on the Roku channel, I think. But
Okay.
they also have a podcast version, and then they also have a YouTube channel, which is where I really live with it because I can select the clips that I want to watch. That's one of the reasons that I love it, is because they will take their 4 hour radio show and then take the most important clips from it, post them on the YouTube channel as like a 3 to 10 minute video, and I can line those up in a playlist and listen to it like a podcast. I'm not really watching the YouTube video at all. I'm just listening to it,
Hmm.
usually maybe on my drive, or, when I'm doing dishes or something, and it'll go through the segments that I choose to watch. So I like that I have an element of choice with it. I don't have to listen to
Nice.
4 hours of them talking. I
Hmm.
can listen to 3 clips a day, or I could listen to 15 clips from that day. And so that's what I really enjoy about it and why it's turned into a daily driver for me. I initially got caught up, I clicked on a YouTube video that was suggested to me. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I started to listen and kind of become attached to Rich, Chris, another guy named TJ, and just kind of their interactions together as friends and coworkers and the way that they talk about sports. So that is the Rich Eisen show. It is my daily driver primarily for sports talk. And in case you were wondering, I listen on 2 times speed to almost everything. So I listen to them very fast. Even when we edit this podcast, I listen to it on 2 times speed. So
Yes, I'm the
um,
same way.
that is my daily driver. Do you have any questions, any thoughts? Have you ever watched
Yes.
Rich
So
Eisen before? And I'm really
yeah,
having trouble
I've
saying that right now. Rich Eisen. I don't know why I'm struggling.
I have heard of them before, and I
Okay.
have seen some of their content. And I wanted to ask, talking about the direction that ESPN, a lot of these sports talk
Hmm.
shows are going, where they are rooted in clicks and ratings and
Right.
just like the debate of it all.
Right.
Which there's value in, obviously there's
Right.
value in that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have the biggest sports production company carrying out on that format almost all of their shows.
Right.
So what are they doing that is capturing that is getting your attention that you're not seeing on, yes, a Pat McAfee show or,
Right.
First Take, was the Get Up, those ESPN
Right.
properties that are covering the exact same game, the exact same topics.
Right. So I think primarily it is that they don't see themselves as the sole authority or the only right opinion. Even with Get Up, which is a more
Mm,
palatable show from
yeah.
ESPN, there is still the element of I'm right, you're wrong. And
Hmm.
here there seems to be some level of journalistic integrity that they have of we're going to report what happened to some degree and then give you our opinion, but I feel free to have my own opinion without being upset or mad at somebody. Where
Mm,
they talk about, you know, I don't know. They just talk about things in a different way. It doesn't feel like it's the end all be all. They talk about their families and having kids and how sports relates to their families, which is a big deal for me.
mm,
I have a family and I am excited to experience sports with my son as he grows up. And so they talk about some of those things. They kind of turn some segments on their heads. You can get on ESPN or any sports website and you're going to get a power rankings article that is somebody's opinion on who the best teams are right now, and it ranks them 1 to 32 or 1 to 30, and you get that. Well, they've turned it into this segment of Rich Eisen never wanted to do power rankings. People tried to talk him into it for years, and he finally gave in and did it, but he only gives you your top 10, and they have a joke kind of at the beginning, like their intro clip to the power rankings segment, where it's, I have the power. These are my power rankings. There is none other like it, and they are only mine, and kind of make fun of the fact that everybody thinks that these power rankings are so important, even though they're not. And
yeah.
they still do it, and it's still a power rankings, but it has a little bit of self awareness to it. They're not taking themselves too seriously. They poke fun at this guy who's a Cowboys fan, which I enjoy when we make fun of Cowboy fans
Me
because
too.
um, I can't even explain. That's a whole different episode of why the Cowboy. If you're a
Oof.
Cowboys fan, I laugh at you and I cry with you all at the same time. So,
Yes.
uh, so I don't know. It's a little bit of a lighter perspective, and they have recurring segments that are kind of comforting to know that on Wednesdays
Mm.
I'm going to get a power ranking, or on Friday they do a show like What's More Likely, and they give, is it more likely that Patrick Mahomes throws for 3 touchdowns, or is it more likely that Saquon Barkley runs for three? And just a very simple concept. You don't have to yell to feel like you have a seat at the table. So
Yes.
that's mostly what draws me
That's
to it.
good. That's good. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, and I think like the power rank, like there's a game that you have to play.
Right.
Like if you are on a mic and you're talking about sports, like you're gonna have to participate in the discord, in the conversation. But I
Right.
do think there needs to be a balance
Yeah.
that we've kind of lost, and
Mm.
the priorities have kind of lost themselves. And just, I mean, and this. It's not just a sports conversation;
Right.
it's a across the board conversation. But
Right.
sadly, sports are also being affected by that.
Yeah.
And so I have just been curious in like the media outlets when it comes to sports
Mm.
that are overall getting it right
Yeah.
with how they're covering the sport, how they're talking about the sport, how they're talking to each other and
Right.
interacting with each other, and the example that they're setting on how
Yeah.
we can talk about sports. And
Right.
so, so
And
yeah,
they
so that's really interesting.
they have guests on too that are outside the sports world, entertainment people. One of my favorite one like kind of recurring guests. Oh, they had Michael Bublé on. Why is Michael Bublé on a sports talk show? And he got to talk about how he's in like 30 different fantasy football leagues. He
Oof.
cares more about.
Oh,
He said he would trade a Grammy for a fantasy football trophy. Like, so you get some of this outside,
that's interesting.
sources as well, to where it feels like you can actually be a part of the conversation because it's not just
Hmm.
somebody who is a former player or a journalist that they're allowing to express sports opinions. And
Okay.
so it allows you to have a seat at the table. But that's mine. That's my
Nice.
daily driver.
Okay.
I will turn it over to you to tell me about who Jxmy Highroller is.
Okay, yes. So, and it's funny because I see we both went the route of sports, and
Okay.
mine is relatively new.
Okay.
But I came across, and it actually started because of this podcast of just like watching. I was doing research on the Luca content, on the
Mm-hmm.
Luca trade, and
Yeah.
I wanted to just hear like how other YouTubers were covering it, and
Right.
that opened the door for YouTube to NBA to YouTube that I haven't really done a lot. Like a lot of my NBA watching has been via
Mm.
podcasts.
Okay.
So, but I came across this account, Jxmy Highroller, and he has over 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and he does these amazing video essays on
Mm.
just the hard hitting questions about the NBA.
Okay.
And they are executed really well because the NBA, I mean, we talked about, the inflammatory and the
Mm-hmm.
aggression, all this stuff. This is a hot take of mine. I just think no one has it worse than the NBA when it comes to that area of sports talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because with NFL and these other sports, I feel like, and this is not a good thing. Like I don't say this
Right.
as the NBA is better. I'm saying that this what makes the NBA a harder product
Right.
to talk about because the
Yep.
NFL just talking about the game is good
Mm-hmm.
enough.
Right.
Just talking about Major League Baseball and hockey is good enough. But with basketball, there's always these just Michael Jordan versus LeBron, and
Right.
the league is too soft, and it's so personable because you
Mm.
have these players who are almost A-list celebrities.
Right.
You can see them in their entirety throughout the game. They're not putting on a helmet,
Right.
like you can see them, you can almost touch them when you go to games, and so it
Right.
is such a personable sport that gets put into the sport.
Mm.
So what I love about Jxmy Highroller's content is that he does an amazing job of tackling these hard-hitting questions that
Mm.
are going to be on First Take. They're going to be on ESPN and all these other different networks, but
Right.
answering them with the perfect balance of nuance,
Mm.
like actual emotion and parody, because that plays a huge part in the NBA. Look no further
Right.
than the Luka trade, and the statistics to back it up. Because
Right.
right now with basketball, you have either the First Take style where it's all arguing, all debates,
Right.
Magic versus LeBron. I mean, Michael Jordan versus LeBron and Magic versus LeBron, all these other different things.
Right.
And it's just based on feelings, vibes, eras, because
Mm.
it's not just about LeBron, it's about the era that LeBron represents versus
Right.
the era that Michael Jordan represents. And that's just a losing argument
Right.
where then you start going into stats, and then, you and I are both stat guys. Stats
Right.
can be misleading. If you
Yep.
just say, well, Jordan has 6 rings, LeBron has 4, then it's like, okay, well, there's,
Right.
there's,
That's
Bill
a
Russell.
very that's a very
He
like
wins.
limited view.
Yes, a very limited view. And so he does these amazing documentaries, feel like documentaries where he is
Mm.
bringing in statistics, bringing in the stories, doing a lot
Right.
of deep research. And he doesn't post a lot. Like this isn't someone who's posting weekly. He's posting once a month. So
Okay.
it's like he's been a daily driver for me because I just discovered him and I'm going through
Okay.
all his videos. But
Right.
he's not someone that is posting a lot. He's posted a lot recently because of the
Yeah.
Luca trade.
Uh-huh.
He did one on the Luca trade, and just Sunday he did one about LeBron James. Does LeBron James make his teammates better?
Mm.
And the difference
Wow.
between making a team better
Mm-hmm.
versus making an individual player better, and how
Mm.
these two things are different, and
Right.
which one is better, and which one describes LeBron.
Right.
And I won't spoil it, but he just goes into he does all 240 players that play with LeBron. Here's their stats with LeBron. Here's their stats without LeBron. Really nice graphics,
Wow.
really nice design. Then he really gets into the nuance of each player to really tell the story of his conclusion beyond why he believes that
Right.
LeBron is X,
Yeah.
He did one about, and he's changed how I think about and have the conversation with my stepdad and my uncle and the old heads in my life about the NBA of the 90s versus the NBA of today and
Right.
what that looks like, what that means. He adds in context that I didn't think about of, like these players of the 90s played to the best of the rules that they were given.
Right.
And the belief or the thought that if they were not in today's NBA that they would not have conformed to that
Mm-hmm.
is reckless. But
Yeah.
then he also throws it back to like, but that also goes to these old like the old heads who are constantly hating on this game. Like this game, whether you want to agree with it or not, is more athletic driven. You
Right.
can't you back then you had a player whose sole purpose was just to knock people out, just to
Right.
foul. Where now you can't do like you can't just have one player dedicated to do that. Each player needs to have 4 or 5 responsibilities, and he like shows this, like he
Right.
explains this and like carry out like this is what this player is doing for their team compared to what in 1990 this player was doing for their team,
Mm.
and it was just really just I mean, I've spent probably 10 hours in the past week,
Wow.
and it's become to the point where um, Bailey and I went to go get some food, and we had to pick it up, and we were waiting, and I was watching. He just came out with that video, the
Yeah.
recent video, and I was like, I gotta finish. Like, we got our food, but I was like, I need to finish this video before I leave, like,
Right.
because I was already watching it once,
Yeah.
like while we were waiting. I was like, I'm not leaving until I know
Hmm.
does LeBron make his teammates better or worse, and
Right.
so.
And
But just really
how did
good
Bailey
stuff.
feel about that? How'd she feel about?
And so I didn't really communicate. I didn't like outright communicate that to her. I just kind of, kind of lull there for a second.
Right.
But yeah. So it was, yeah. But it's gotten to that point now where notification bell is on.
Mm.
If he makes a video, I'm
Right.
stopping what I'm doing. I'm pulling it up because these are the conversations that I want to have when I'm
Right.
talking about basketball and
Yeah.
not the other
Right.
stuff. And so,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So I have so many thoughts. So I'll start with the actual questions about Jimmy Highroller, who sounds like a very full of himself gambler in like an 80s movie. Jimmy Highroller coming in to a small town and just wrecking shop. But
No.
how long are each of his videos? Like on average, are we talking about like a 5 minute video, a 10 minute video, or like are we talking like 30 minutes or longer?
15 to 21,
Okay.
that like range,
Right.
like 14,
Okay.
15. Yeah.
So there is a significant level of time commitment. I suppose in YouTube
Hmm.
standards, there's a time commitment. In
Yes.
the terms of
Yes.
television or movies, that wouldn't be obviously long at all. But so you have some. Is there um he so it seems like he's taking what could be an inflammatory topic and presenting actual things to back it up as opposed to a 2 minute clip of yelling about it. Would that be an
Yes.
accurate interpretation of it?
Yes, very much
Okay.
so.
And is it just basketball? Does he do anything else in his
Just
content library?
I have not gone super far. I mean, it does seem like it's just basketball.
Okay.
Like that all of his videos are thumbnails of different NBA players.
Right.
So,
Okay. It's awesome. Well, that sounds interesting. It makes me think about us doing all-time NBA top 10 players. I think you probably have a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet on that topic and kind of weighting those things like championships versus MVPs versus,
oh, that'll be yeah.
winning percentage, all-time sport points record, that type of stuff. I think that would be an interesting conversation for us to have
Oh,
as well,
yes.
especially as you are more into basketball than I am. And my opinion probably is not as
No, it still
informed,
matters.
but I know it still matters. Of course, my opinion matters. We're making a podcast. I obviously think my opinion matters,
Hmm.
but there's a lack of knowledge that I have that may feed into a different ranking list.
Well, I
So,
think and I think the fun thing with basketball, and this is another reason why I love the game so much, is that it is one where you can just have those kind of conversations. Like I don't know what a top 10 in a like football
right,
player list would look like, or because so many different positions, so
right,
many, it's just so much to it where it's it's easy to look. It's easy for the naked eye to look at a LeBron and a Michael Jordan
right,
playing basketball and then just be like, who did that better?
right. Yeah,
It's not something that requires a lot of nuance
mm,
and stats and
right,
logistics and all these other different things, circumstances. It really comes to who can take this ball and pass it the best, shoot it the
right,
best, dunk it the best, move guard, prevent the other team from doing it the
mm,
best. Like it's something my wife can look at and she can tell you this is a good player,
right,
this is a bad player. And so what
right,
both of us, when it comes to football, look and just like, we don't know what's
Right.
like. I know enough, but when they start talking X's and O's, it
Yeah.
is.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, I think basketball does have that approachable level to it where you can just kind of watch it and understand it. But then there's also the very high end level, such as like when LeBron James and now his coach JJ Redick had a podcast together and were very high level, very basketball intellectual IQ type high level stuff that you had to be a big basketball fan to watch that.
yes, and
So,
you're seeing that, and I watched that, and you're seeing that play out now with how the Lakers. And I don't want to get too into current NBA talks, but you are seeing. It's crazy to see these two who were just podcast buddies having that conversation now actually
right.
carrying it out because they are like
Yeah.
the way they're second in the league now as of today,
Okay.
March 3rd,
Yeah.
and the way that they guard every single night for a team is completely different, and they are taking away the other team desire to do the thing that they love to do, and it's just that simple to them. Like this is
Wow.
what they want to do, so we do X. And
Right.
and the fact that he has a team, JJ Redick has a team that can adjust on the fly like that, especially
Right.
with their new shining toy and Luca.
Right.
They it's going to be interesting. I'm
Yeah.
excited for some NBA playoff conversations in the future
Yeah.
because it looks going to be a
Yeah.
really good 3 months for Travelle, who loves playoff basketball.
Uh, it'll be a couple good weeks when the finals are going for Carson. So, uh, I mean, if the Warriors are in it, I'll be paying more attention. And we do have
And that's
March
a
Madness
real
coming up,
possibility.
which is, I guess it is
Yes.
basketball season. If I'm going to pay attention to basketball, now is the time to do so. Um, So we want to know what your guys' daily drivers are. Is there anything that is a piece of content creator, even if it's like a blog or articles? Is there a certain website that you like to go to for news and information? Any of those things that being aware of what you go to on a repeated basis and what type of source that is, I think is important as we think about mental health and the way that content and media impacts our lives. If we're constantly going to inflammatory type content, how does that affect our lives when we're not looking at it? But is that making us a little bit more angry, a little bit more excitable, whatever that is? So being aware of what you take in daily and who you're listening to or watching, I think, is an important piece of this daily drivers segment that will probably recur because I think we have a couple things
Yep.
each. I could probably list off 3 or 4 more of things that I intake daily or weekly basis. So that is daily drivers.
And so for our outtake challenge for this week, kind of going off what you just said,
Hmm.
being aware of what we're consuming and kind of thinking about all the different outlets, like it's just crazy to think, 10, 15 years ago, it really was just television and
Yep.
theaters.
Yep.
And now, we have YouTube, we have podcasts, and in books, like that was a thing at that time too. But now like book books, and now you have audio files, and you have all of these different types of
Right.
media. And at one point I tried to avoid all of it. One
Mm.
point I tried to consume all of it, and now it really, like you said, like it really does come to just being mindful and being aware.
Mm.
And like for me, basketball is something I love. I just can't get away from it.
Right.
But I want to make sure that I'm consuming the parts of it that uplifts me and not make me want to fight somebody when they say that this generation of basketball sucks.
Right.
But to go to the outtake challenge,
Mm.
the challenge is for us is to spend this week reflecting on the different ways that we consume media, whether that's TV, movie, YouTube, podcast.
Right.
And at first I said choosing one, but I would say like let's do a top 3. Like if there were 3
Yeah.
that you had to keep,
Ooh.
and if you couldn't put them in order, that's brownie points.
Right.
But if there was 3 that you had to keep,
Right.
what would those 3 be? So like
Okay.
if you didn't pick movies, no more theater trips, no more watching movies. So
Right.
and this is gonna be hard for me.
Yeah.
I don't have, like, I'm not saying this to you as I already have mine. Look, no, I
Right.
don't. Like I thought of this and I was like, I can't answer this question, which
Right.
is why it's gonna be the outtake challenge.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So let's define a list here so we know what we're
yes,
going off of.
yes,
We have movies, big screen,
big screen,
small screen television,
yes,
um, let's go tiny screen like YouTube. Let's just define it as YouTube.
YouTube, yeah.
Anything that you like, a video that you can watch on your phone, but YouTube's probably just the easiest way to define that.
Yes.
Podcast.
Books.
That will, for those who may go along with us at home, books and audiobooks will count that as one, because I know that's a debate, and maybe we bring on a guest to talk about that debate for books versus audiobooks. But books versus audiobooks. What else am I missing?
Were sports? Like, would that be its own category, or will we just lump that in?
I mean, I think sports has to be its own category.
Yeah.
It's live television, so it is different than just television. So I think
a TV show. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, top 3 is going to be hard. I can't believe you were going to make us choose one. I'm glad you expanded it to 3. Oh, man. My parents are going to be so ashamed of me if I don't choose books. But it's not looking good. All right. Well, that's a very interesting challenge for next week. We'll put that official list up on the screen here, so that way you at home can go along with us. And if you had to only intake 3 for the rest of your life, which 3 would it be? And I think that's an interesting challenge to get back to. I can't believe it was 15 years ago, a time where there really wasn't podcasts. We need to put music on there. Music needs to be on that list.
Yeah, music, yes. Music, yes.
But there were probably closer to a handful, as opposed to now multitudes of options for content that you can take in. And I think it's interesting to try to get back to that. And maybe a challenge even in the future would be to do that, and to only intake a certain amount or from certain mediums or sources. I think that'd be interesting as well. But we will just define our top 3. We're not gonna jump the gun. We're not gonna make it too hard, too quick. But anyway, that is our challenge. I think it's a great challenge. Thanks for coming up with that, Travelle. And so as we kind of wrap up and exit here, we want to know what your daily drivers are. We'd love to see those in the comments, hear about them through our email or social media channels. And next week, we are going to be bringing you our review of the Daredevil Born Again series premiere. So this is a new show, but also a continuation of the Netflix Daredevil series. It'll be on Disney Plus, and we will be watching I think it's the first 2 episodes, and then bringing a review of kind of what we think. Travelle is a big fan of the Netflix show.
Yes.
I have not really seen it, so we'll get 2 kind of unique perspectives on the series premiere next week, and then we are going to bring 2 new categories. Lots of new categories here at the beginning of our podcast, of audio files, which will really be focused on podcasts, and then Jumbotron, which will be sports related. So we do talk about sports kind of briefly here. We had our daily drivers were both sports oriented, but this will really be a focused in sports discussion, and we are calling it Jumbotron just to stick to the, big screen, small screen, tiny screen. Now we're going Jumbotron, and so that will be sports.
Until next time, consume wisely and stay thoughtful. Thank you for tuning in to the Intake Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share with your friends. You can watch all of our video podcasts on YouTube at youtube.com/The Intake. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at The Intake Pod, and share your own intake experience with us via email at intakepod@gmail.com. This podcast is produced by us, Travelle McManus and Carson.